Right, so the album I am reviewing today is the new album, the fifth studio album by the band Tribulation, Where the Gloom Becomes Sound, released on the 29th of January via Century Media Records. It is 10 tracks and it's about 48 minutes in length. The first thing that struck me about this album, or about the band, was how the lead singer's vocal style reminded me of that of Mikael Stan's of Dark Tranquillities. I just thought there was a real similarity in their vocal style there. But the band itself, I mean, I felt they were quite distinctive. They're not like a lot that I could think of that I'd heard before, although in this album particularly you can find that you can see there are some influences from other bands, but they certainly have a sort of quite a unique gothic style to their music, and I think that's very well highlighted on this album. I also would say a real plus point on this album is that it has quite a nice sort of, I think, journey feel to it. There are, it's not all one tempo. There are good uses, I think, of tempo changes in this album. Just as an example, after the piano interlude, which is quite a nice slow little almost break in the album, you followed up with a very good fast tempo track in Daughter of the Djinn. And I thought this album was good in the way that it slightly had those tempo variations in it. I would say also the tracks that I enjoyed the most. First up, the opener. What an opener that was, In Remembrance. Really good chorus. This sort of quite Queensryche-like guitar rhythm I felt was used in this track. And it's interesting because the chorus is kind of, I think, I Remember Now, which reminded me a bit of I Remember Now from Operation Mindcrime. So I did enjoy the first track a lot. Now, Hour of the Wolf didn't hit me really. I didn't find that as such a good track. It just felt a bit one way. It was the same line, I think, throughout a lot of the tracks, same line of music. I just didn't feel that one so much. I know it was released as a single, so perhaps it's actually a very popular track in the Tribulation community, but just for me, wasn't my flavour really. Leviathans was quite good, with an amazing bridge section that I really liked in that track. Dirge of a Dying Soul, thoroughly enjoyed that one. Lovely build up in that track, and the use of these guitar harmonies, which is kind of present throughout this album at different times. One of the great strengths of this album, in my opinion, were those kind of Maiden-esque, by that I mean Iron Maiden style dual guitar harmonies that are present in a lot of this album. Other tracks I really enjoyed, Daughter of the Djinn, as I mentioned before. I liked Inanna, I liked the harmonies in that one. Funeral Pile, I'm not so sure about. Again, that was another single, but I didn't really do much for me. I just felt that, again, it was kind of a bit sort of, there weren't enough moments in the track that really got my attention. And The Wilderness was a good finish. Reminded me a bit of Ghost, actually, in the progressions in this track, and there was that strident marching rhythm that was the thing that particularly reminded me of a Ghost song, perhaps a bit like Per Aspera ad Inferi. There was just something in this track that reminded me of that one. So overall, how would I rate this album? Well, I think it might end up being a bit of a grower. I can see the album's potential. I can see why it's had a positive reception, I think, from what I can tell so far. I guess I'm going into this review pretty unbiased because I've not listened to much of Tribulation's other stuff, so I feel like I'm not too close to the band. So I think for me, this is a 7 out of 10, which might seem a little harsh, but for me that's where I would put this album at the moment for how I feel about it right at this moment in time. I feel like it does have a bit of potential to maybe go a little higher than that, maybe down the line, but I think on the whole there wasn't quite enough that makes me think I'm going to rush back to listen to this album again, and for that reason I think it's partly why I would give it a 7, because it doesn't have a lot of replay value yet for me. I will probably revisit a couple of tracks on this album for sure I will go back to in remembrance, and I suspect Dirge of the Dying Soul and possibly Daughter of the Djinn, but the rest of the album for me perhaps just lacked enough dynamic and enough for me to return to it on a regular basis. So thank you for watching this album review. Hope you enjoyed it. You may agree or disagree with some of my comments in this review, and I'm happy for you to agree or disagree. As I say, I think I get a gut feeling with this album there is growth potential, so an initial score of 7 may be revised at some stage, but for me this lies as a good album, worth a listen, but maybe not one that I will go back to much in the future. Thanks all, see you all again soon.